All right, let's get into this because it is an incredible story. We're talking about how a simple, and I mean simple, question about how to spend a day off completely spiraled out of control and led to one of the biggest conflicts in English history. This is a culture war that didn't start on a battlefield. Nope, it started in the village square. So, picture this. We're not starting with kings or generals. Our story begins with the sounds of a 16th century English market. It's bustling, it's chaotic, it's loud. It's the absolute heart of the community. This is literally the soundtrack of the city. Vendors shouting, trying to sell you everything you could possibly imagine. And this was way more than just a place for the locals to grab their groceries. It was a global trading hub. I mean, can you imagine a single ship arriving with 20,000 oranges? In the 1500s? The market was the public stage for, well, for everything. Royal celebrations, pageants, and even public hangings. This wasn't just about business. This was the community. Ah, and there it is. That's the question. That one simple question ends up becoming the spark for a bitter culture war that would tear the nation apart for decades. We're talking neighbor against neighbor, and pretty soon, Parliament against the king himself. You see, there was this growing movement of really devout Protestants. You probably know them as the Puritans. And for them, fixing society meant one thing had to change, above all else: Sunday. They wanted to totally transform it. No more mixing worship with fun. It had to be a day for God, and for God only. A day of quiet, sober, religious thought. So you've got these two totally clashing ideas of what Sunday should be. On one side, you have the traditional Sunday. You go to church in the morning, do your duty, and then the rest of the day is for sports, dancing, having a drink with your neighbors. But on the other side, you have this new, much stricter Puritan Sabbath. For them, any kind of fun or game was basically a sin, a slap in the face to the Lord's day. And what starts as a local argument over dancing around a maypole or having a beer on a Sunday, well, it starts to bubble up. It gets bigger and bigger until it catches the attention of the crown. And that forces the king himself to step in and pick a side in this rapidly growing culture war. So in 1618, King James I issues this absolutely stunning declaration. He basically says that banning sports on Sunday is a bad idea. His argument was that it actually made people less fit for war. And get this, he said instead of making people more holy, it just led to them getting drunk in alehouses and spreading gossip. So the king puts out this book of sports, and it lists exactly what kind of fun he thought was harmless for regular people. You've got archery, leaping, Morris dances, but, and this is a big but, there was a catch. You were only allowed to join in if you had already gone to the full church service that morning. Now, the king wasn't just giving a free pass for everything. He definitely drew a line. He strictly banned the more brutal or rowdy pastimes. Things like bear baiting and bull dating were a huge no-go. So, Morris dancing after you've been to church? Fine. Watching a bear get torn to pieces by dogs? Absolutely not on a Sunday. You'd think this royal compromise might calm things down, right? Yeah, not so much. It pleased almost nobody. Instead of putting out the fire, it basically poured gasoline all over it, turning these local squabbles into a full-blown battle for the soul of the nation. For the Puritans, the king's declaration was just an outrage. I mean, they saw it as the king himself giving people an official license to sin. In their minds, this wasn't about tradition. It was about the king actively luring people away from church and straight into a life of vice and disorder. And this whole conflict played out in towns and villages all over England. You had Puritan-leaning judges clashing with traditionalists, and they would use things like public humiliation, parading people around in these paper hats to try and force their version of a godly society on everyone else. And so the battle lines are drawn. And over the next 25 years, this whole thing just keeps escalating. Parliament starts to directly challenge the king passing its own laws. Then King Charles I, he doubles down. He orders that his father's declaration has to be read in every single church. It all comes to a breaking point in 1643 when Parliament, now on the very brink of war, orders the king's book to be publicly burned. Just a huge symbolic act of defiance. And that's really the key takeaway here. This was never really just about having fun on a Sunday. The Book of Sports became this powerful symbol for a much, much bigger fight. It was about the king's power versus the power of Parliament and the freedom of religion.
It's a perfect example of how one of these cultural flashpoints can help draw the political battle lines for an actual civil war.
So the war eventually ended. Kings came and went, but that fundamental tension, the whole Sunday question, it never really went away. And actually, its legacy is all around us, even today. And here's the part that's truly fascinating, the incredible, kind of surprising legacy of this whole movement. The Puritans' passionate and, let's be real, often pretty severe, campaign for a day of rest, a day free from both work and shopping, completely reshaped Western culture. It basically gave us the blueprint for the modern weekend. The whole idea of how we structure our lives around work, rest, and play, a lot of that comes from this fight. So in the end, this crazy conflict from the 1600s forces us to ask a question that is just as relevant today as it was then. Who gets to decide a community's values? Who sets the rules for the public square? It's a debate that started with maypoles and Morris dances, but it's a debate that is absolutely still happening in our own public squares right now.